5 years in Chicago, and then 5 years in Toledo. So you can do the math. You know how old I am. It's a delight to be with you today. I'm very excited about the planning process that we recently concluded. Let me tell you a little bit about that process. After my appointment by the Board of Trustees in September, we decided to take a 90-day period to take an inventory of the main campus and to summarize its strengths, its weaknesses, what opportunities that we saw, what threats were in the external environment, to identify the opportunities for improvement. And we assembled 5 groups of people. We assembled a group of deans and those who work on the academic side of the institution. We assembled a group of student leaders. We assembled a group of department chairs and associate deans. We assembled a group of faculty senate representatives, graduate council representatives, and all of these groups met a minimum of 3 times over a period of 90 days, for typically about 2 hours, to talk about what was strong, what was weak, and what we thought we could do to improve the University of Toledo. The input from all of those groups then resulted in a draft plan that went to a steering committee that included representatives from the faculty senate and from student leadership, as well as members of the provost staff. And we reviewed the first draft to the point where on December the 17th, we issued Imagine 2017. It is a strategic plan for the main campus, not the health science campus, but the main campus. It is a plan in the sense of not whether it's written on paper or included in a PowerPoint presentation, or whether or not it's presented in a finely wordsmithed document. It's a plan in terms of what we intend to do to make the institution better. And so tonight, I am pleased to share that plan with you and to talk a little bit about the early stages of implementing the plan, some of the early feedback that we've received, and then also to answer whatever questions that you have tonight. So, again, thank you for coming. When we do say this, you are well represented in terms of the leadership of your student senate, the leadership of your student government. You are well represented if you're a graduate student, with the representative, the leadership of your graduate student council, all of whom participated in this process and who are ongoing important parts of your University of Toledo. In fact, I think we're all meeting again for our monthly lunch tomorrow, where we have an ongoing dialogue about how things are going on campus. So again, welcome. I'm going to step away from the podium and approach the computer for a moment to walk you through the various elements of the plan. I will not take a lot of time with the presentation. I'll speed through it. In fact, if there is something along the way, don't wait until the end if you have a question when we reach a certain page of the document. I know that several of you are familiar with it, and I'd be happy to answer your questions along the way. On the other hand, if you'd like to see the whole plan, perhaps you're seeing it for the first time, you'd like to see the whole plan and then formulate a list of questions, there'll be ample time at the end of the presentation for you to pose your questions. So enjoy the pizza, enjoy the drink, and let me walk you through a quick look at Imagine 2017. It begins with a cover letter that simply describes the process that we engaged. It includes a restatement of the university's mission statement. This is what we publish as the mission of the University of Toledo. It also includes a restatement of the vision statement. Again, this is not new. This is the published vision statement as we want to see our university. It also is a restatement of the core values. Plans change, but presumably core values do not change often. So the university for now many years has had a set of core values, a set of standards of conduct that we attempt to hold ourselves to in terms of how we interact with each other as we pursue our mission. So those do not change in this plan. One that I have always wanted to emphasize, though, one of our core values is teamwork. In the many years that I've been engaged working in higher education over the years, one of the things that I have found that if any organization learns to practice teamwork, almost anything is possible. It's those organizations who struggle with how to work together in kind of a respectful, collegial manner
that they struggle. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time on is the team that gets assembled to work on your behalf, making your university better. I feel like if I can get that right, if I can find more people like Kate Patton Wallace and Sammy Spann and others that are dedicated, or Sarah Martinez, are dedicated to your well-being first, then we've got the right kind of people who can make this place better. This is not easy. It's easy to talk about. It's not easy to achieve. In fact, you can achieve it one day and lose it the next. But it is what is most important. There's always a lot of conversation, especially in times of funding cuts, when you ask yourself, what is core to our institution? What are the things that we do that we always want to protect, we always want to make sure that we do well? So if you happen to be a business student, you'll learn something about the input-output model. This is simply using that model to represent those things that are most important to make sure that we're always focused on improving every day. Great students, great faculty, great curriculum and learning methods, inspiring and functional facilities, great IT, strong financial resources, all coming together in some of the key processes of teaching and research and service, all to produce graduates that are prepared to succeed in their chosen career, research, service, economic development for our community, quality of life, pride and inspiration in our institution, to the point where then people are then in a position to be able to give back to the institution. So these are the things that are core to our mission and what we always want to put first in any plan that we present. As you think about the University of Toledo, you need to think in terms of our three missions. This is common for most public comprehensive universities. Universities usually exist to do three things: teach great students, add to the body of knowledge, and then be of great service to their various communities. We are no different, so we organize ourselves around the achievement of these three different missions. One of the things that as we pursue our teaching mission that's very important to realize is that we don't serve one particular type of student. You know this. Represented in this room today are various different types of students. Students who came to the institution well prepared, students who came to the institution underprepared, students that came to the institution as adult students with different types of needs and expectations, students who can't physically be present but wish to engage in continuing education via the internet, and then students who wish to pursue graduate education after their undergraduate degree. So one of the ways that we organize ourselves is to meet the needs of these different types of students and to develop portals of entry into our institution that again are focused on serving students of particular types. So we are trying to perfect this model in being more explicit about what particular parts of our institution are most responsible for the overall educational experience of the different types of students that we serve. For our well-prepared students, we want to make sure that our honors college is the portal that connects to that student, stays engaged, and makes sure that that educational experience is appropriate to their level of preparedness. For the prepared student, we're going to create an entity called U College, again, that's simply responsible for making sure that the total educational experience is A+. Students may change majors and change colleges, but the idea is that they'll stay connected to their portal college from beginning to end, and then on and on. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question about, I understand the desire for consistency and being connected to your college, but doesn't this sort of pigeonhole students into this one category? Personally, I do online and I do other stuff, and also I know people who become underprepared, but within a year are well prepared.
Right. And you're going to see, the way we communicate to others is that there's this partnership, but there's this primary responsibility. What we're trying to do is prevent students from falling through the cracks. So if we have multiple institutions that are serving you, great. What we're most concerned about is having no institution that loses track of you. But you're right, and over your lifetime, even in the period of time over a semester, you might move from one portal to the other. But the idea is that we'll have people who will be held accountable, someone use the word accountability, for you as a student, regardless of the major that you ultimately graduate with. We've also done extensive focus group research of students of various types to make sure that we understand the things that the students of all type are expecting today. We're using that research to then inform the leaders of these various portal colleges to make sure that we're accentuating the opportunities for accelerated curriculum, experiential learning, for prior learning assessment, which is very important to adult students. So again, this is simply information that the portal colleges use to design an educational experience that fits the expectations of the various types of students that we serve. And although we have these various portals, what our research shows is all students, regardless of type, ultimately are looking for higher levels of experiential learning, what are called flipped or wrapped classrooms, which I'll explain in a minute, a student-centered experience rather than a us-centered experience. Everyone wants to enjoy a beautiful campus and functional facilities that enhance their learning environment. And when they engage the university online, they want it to be elegantly designed and function well. And so as the people who lead these various portal colleges, we're asking them to do an assessment to say, are you providing ample opportunities? Are you meeting the standard in all of these areas? For those of you anybody wish to try to describe the flipped classroom concept? Anybody familiar with that term? Yeah, could you try to maybe explain it in a way that you understand it?
It's designed that you can sort of watch a lecture or sort of see the material on your own, and the classroom is more dedicated to group work and like actually working on the material.
Right, great explanation. So let me give you an example. When I first began teaching at the undergraduate level, I would give the typical lecture, I'd give the typical homework assignment, there'd be a typical midterm final, maybe another set of quizzes. And when I started, that seemed to work. But as all of you have become much more technologically savvy and have more technological tools at your disposal, the last time that I taught undergraduate finance, the very first class, hand went up, and I got the question, are your PowerPoint slides available on Blackboard? To which I responded, yes, they are. To which they then opened their laptop, got out their cell phone, began texting, kind of tuned me out at that point. And so the next time that I teach undergraduate finance, I think I will try to flip the classroom, meaning I will pre-record my lectures, put them available online, ask students to review the lecture before coming to class at their own convenience, watch it as many times as they need to get the material right. And then I'll design the classroom experience with more homework-like group activities where I can work hands-on, making sure that they really understand how to apply the knowledge that I lectured about, which is now available online. That's called flipping the classroom, taking the lecture that used to be in the class, making it available online at home, taking the homework that used to be done at home and making it where it occurs in the classroom in an interactive environment. It's called flipping the classroom. Yeah.
So if we were to go that approach for the average classes at UT, what's the difference of, say, attending the University of Phoenix versus UT? If you're going to make things online, which students, that sounds great, but as me as a student, I'm not going to do that, even though I'm tech savvy. And that doesn't mean all students are going to do it. I'm not going to do it just because I'm lazy.
Yeah, and I might find that the next time I do it, it may not work for all students. And so I'll have to adapt to various learning modes. But the point is that it's finding enough success in enough places around the college where certain types of classroom, mine in particular, the type that I feel like I could reach more students that way more effectively by trying it. But if I find out there are more students that like you that say, that's just not what I want to do, then maybe I try a hybrid approach. I do some of the amount of lecturing in a breakout session type environment, and other students can use the video more as a tutoring if they didn't get it.
Because I'm an engineer, and so to me that's going to fail in my engineering aspect because I would like hands-on learning. I'm construction engineering here at UT,
right? And
a lot of it's hands-on in charts, but if we do online stuff, there's nothing, I'm not going to learn nothing. Because a lot of that stuff I have to learn hands-on. I have to know how this piece is going to fit here, in order to build a building.
Right.
But if I do it online, I
And
just
we'll
feel
trust the faculty member to work with the students to know what works best for each student. And this is not something that's going to be mandated. It's something that's simply going to be offered to allow faculty members to do it if they want to try it. It's very easy to do. I mean, every month I do a what's called a Provost Corner video. And I put it on the web, and I talk about what's going on campus. And I do one a month. For the last 5 months, I've been talking about the development of the plan, how it's been going. Then beginning last month, I've been talking about each strategy in the plan. So last month, I talked about strategy number 1 involving the Honors College. Next month, I'll talk about the new relationship with an organization called Digerati and the new internship program that we have. So every month, I'll feature one. People say, you know, how do you do that? I do that on Saturday mornings at my house and with a green screen behind me, with staring into a little video camera on a tripod. I don't go to a studio to do it. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to try to do that is because, to me, that's the way that our faculty members of the future could perfect the recording of their lectures or their study aids or their tutoring sessions. And it's so easy to pop that, you know, out of a camera into the computer and make it available on the web. And you can, interestingly, they say, you know, where's that beautiful library that you were standing in? Well, that's just a superimposed background. I was standing in front of a green screen in my living room when I recorded that. So it's very easy, very inexpensive, and I think it's a way of the future. The wrapped classroom simply means that I simply don't take my pre-recorded videos, but I take great lectures from professors all over the world and build them into the curriculum of what I'm providing my students. So I'm wrapping my lectures with lectures of great scholars all over the world. So that's what the wrap classroom is called. When we go there and then back to
I'm a little concerned. First of all, it is fairly well documented. Obviously, I have a proof on it right now that people do learn better from firsthand engagement with their instructors. Now, allowing instructors to just go to the extreme of making everything over the internet, you're going to permit a lot of room for natural disorder, a lot of room for laziness on the instructors' parts as well. Every student who signed on to their classes is going to be at risk at the fault of these instructors. In many ways, we're at risk here. I'm not very confident in this. I don't like it.
Well, I wouldn't want you to misinterpret. We're not encouraging them to go to the extreme. And if we did, we'd ask them to pull back. So we wouldn't want that either.
But by then, it would be too late for so many students.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll be real honest with you. I mean, when I was in college, which now was a long time ago, I was an undergraduate student in accounting. The best education that I got in college was basically my time as a student senator and a student government president. That was the best education that I got. I learned all my accounting after I got out of school to pass the CPA exam. So it's never too late. You're not going to have great professors, great classes throughout. It's never too late to learn. One of the things that we teach you at a university is how to learn on your own. And so, if a professor misses by trying this, there will be an opportunity for, I think, you to recover.
See, as a kinesthetic learner like me, I have to engage.
Yeah, well, that's good. And so you'll want a faculty member. I mean, choosing your faculty carefully will be important to you. I am more the visual learner, simply needing time to look, to draw something out, to hear someone discuss it with a visual. That works for me, but you'll have to find professors and opportunities to learn that fit your learning style. And the professor should be committed to try to help you do that as well.
On that same concept that you just said, you said finding the right faculty member for you is very important.
Right.
Well, in my department, for example, the anthropology department, there's only one person that teaches all of my core classes. I don't get along with her method. Even if she changed her method, I'm still not going to get along with her, and it's driving my grade into the gutter. What about a situation like that where a teacher is completely unwilling to change to suit her students?
Yeah, it sounds like you have an extraordinary situation. Why don't you come see me and we'll see if we can work out a solution for
I
it.
have a similar situation. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Well, and it only stresses what your student representatives told us during the planning process. They said the first thing that you've got to make sure you get right is advisement, because those folks and that process is as critical to student success as anything else, and that's what they put. And it's not that they said we have bad advising in certain areas of the institution, but it's the consistency issue. So part of this strategic plan is to try to look at best practices in certain areas, for example, pharmacy, and to try to make sure that there's a consistent advising experience being delivered. Why don't we go here and then we'll move back.
I actually have another question about the portal college.
Yeah, sure.
So is your concept with the 5 portal colleges that every undergrad or new student coming into the university to be placed into one of the portal colleges and from there into whatever college their program is?
Yes.
Or is it just going to be like a separate thing for those who want to be it? So a person could come and go straight to the undergrad and not be part of it?
Our plan would be that every student coming into the university through one of these portals would be assigned to one of these areas, whether you knew it or not. We want someone to feel the responsibility for making sure that you're moving through the system in the right way. You might not even know it. In fact, I think the honors college students would know it, and several of the others, but those who are involved in, say, U College might not even know that U College exists, but there should be someone making sure that your experience is tracking appropriately. And that's new. And so but we believe this is an opportunity to be more student-centered.
Let's just keep the presentation, like if you have questions about clarification, and let's save all like personal concerns and in-depth questions till the end for after the presentation. So we should just keep that.
Okay, one more and then I'll move forward. Go ahead, you at the very back. Yeah, that's you.
So let's have 80 credit hours.
Yeah.
And you do the scope of classes.
Mhm.
I don't have to go online and watch actually 80 credit hours worth of lectures at home. Now, if I have a job on top of that, or even if one of my classes doesn't say assignment or community work, where am I finding all this time?
Well, presumably it doesn't change the number of hours that you're spending on a class. It just changes the type of time, what you're doing when you are away from the class. Again, it's flipping it. It's not adding to it. It's flipping the time. But the chances of you taking 6 3-hour courses where every professor is flipping the classroom while you're in college is pretty slim. All right, well, I said one more, then I'll press forward. Why don't you just hold it for a minute, and then we'll have more Q&A time. But we're only on slide number 14, and I've got 110 to go.
Well, I have the question that I think everyone's thinking here.
Okay,
Your
go
flipped
ahead.
classroom concept and your wrapped classroom concept.
Yeah.
These are, I do a lot of online learning and I look up a lot of the stuff by myself.
Yeah.
The difference is I don't pay for it. And isn't this designed in a way to make it much easier to have larger class sizes?
No.
It is. Because these programs are designed to
Well, if
reach
you
as
knew the
many
answer,
students as
you
possible.
probably didn't need to ask the question. Okay, so let's keep going.
Can you move your slide over? Thank you.
Okay, so again, we're still at kind of the high level. Let's talk about one of the other missions of the university, the research mission. The institution is committed to research for a variety of reasons, one of which is to make sure that our faculty stay current and relevant in their field. Part of it is the obligation that research universities have to continue to advance knowledge. One of the reasons why we engage in research is to try to be an aid to our local Northwest Ohio community, to help in the name of economic development, to help the community solve problems. And one of the points of current emphasis in our research agenda is something called an interdisciplinary school. That's 1, 2. An interdisciplinary school. And we're currently have designated 4 institutionally designated schools where faculty in various colleges come together again to solve very important, large, global type issues. One of which is green chemistry and advanced renewable energy. This is a partnership between the College of Engineering and the College of Natural Sciences and Math. There is a interdisciplinary schools of biomarker research and personalized medicine, which is a partnership of the College of Medicine and again the College of Natural Sciences and Math. We have another interdisciplinary school that is focused on advanced simulation. In fact, the university is building an advanced simulation center on the health science campus, and the university is a leader in advanced simulation. And then lastly, the College of Business and the College of Medicine is engaged in an interdisciplinary school entitled Healthcare Business Enterprise and Innovation. Again, in the name of sustainability, in the name of more efficient, sustainable healthcare, in the name of advancing personalized medicine where we can prevent disease before it happens. These are the areas where the university is investing large amounts of money and resources to move these areas forward. Then lastly, our service mission. The university spends a lot of time in the area of patient care with the University of Toledo Medical Center. On the other campus, we have about a 225-bed hospital and a full comprehensive set of outpatient clinics that serve this community. They not only provide outstanding patient care, but they serve as teaching labs for all of our students in the healthcare fields. We're also involved in running, or I should say hosting, a high school on our Scott Park campus called Toledo Early College High School. In conjunction with Toledo Public Schools, which is another part of our service mission. We have for all of you involved with the visual arts, you know that we have a strong partnership with the Toledo Museum of Art, arguably a top 10 museum of art in the United States. We're looking to do a closer relationship with WGTE in the development of a new College of Communication and a new partnership in that area. And then many of our faculty are engaged in something called learning assessment, which to maintain our accreditation, we must engage in this to show that we're continuously assessing, measuring, identifying areas of improvement, and then making areas or investments to improve learning throughout the institution. So these are the key areas of service for our service mission. The 5 groups that worked on this plan did an extensive kind of analysis of what's going on in higher education. These next series of slides I'll move through very quickly, but they will give you a sense of the external environment in which we operate and how it is changing and changing fairly dramatically. The future of higher education is there's going to be more demand for graduates as our economy continues to become more and more sophisticated. The need for some level of college education is going to be necessary for more and more jobs in the future. And yet, at the same time we're asked to serve more students, our public financial support is decreasing. So this is one of the key challenges we and other public universities have at this time. Also, more intense competition coming from new players in the market, for-profit higher education providers like the University of Phoenix, new providers of education. You've heard the term massive online open courses, the so-called MOOCs, are new forms of competition. And so the rate of competition is only increasing. Fewer tuition rate increases for a long period of time. The way that universities compensated for declining public support, declining state appropriation, was then to make up for what they were losing from the state by charging higher tuition. I don't know about you, but most students are not in a position to continue to afford higher tuition rate, so that you're not going to see that in the future. At the same time, technology continues to advance. The tools available to us continue to proliferate, which is nice. Fewer non-core programs. Because of declining public support, we have to be more selective on the types of services and programs that we can afford to offer. And lastly, the world continues to get smaller and smaller, and we have to prepare our students for be part of the global economy. So the need to provide a relevant international education for not just a few students, but for all students, and how to engage in a world economy becomes more and more important. So this is the future that we have to be able to respond to. So most of what you'll see next are simply the documentation that supports this future vision of what is going to happen, what is happening in higher education. State governments are still facing budget pressures from a number of sources, causing them to have less money to provide to public higher education. This shows the decline in state and government appropriations and the increase in tuition rates at public universities across the country. This shows at the same time that we were increasing tuition, real median income, real income for the last decade has actually declined. Those who follow the industry, who write, who analyze the industry, at one point said all but the most elite universities faced diminished student demand and increasing price sensitivity due to a long, prolonged period of depressed family income, household net worth, and a dip in domestic high school graduates since the peak of 3.34 million in 2007-08. So again, at the same time that state funding is going down, the number of students coming out of the high school pipeline are going down. The ability of students to pay higher tuition rate is decreasing. So again, it becomes the perfect storm of kind of a financial challenge for most higher education institutions across the country. And again, just some interesting quotes in very respectable publications that simply are drawing conclusions that the groups who helped put this plan together thought were worth quoting. And the question is how to fight it. And for now 2 State of the Unions in a row, the President of the United States has chosen to comment on the fact that higher education institutions cannot continue to increase tuition, or they'll see their support dwindle even more from the public. And I don't have it in here, but just, what was it, last week? Once again, there was a comment by the President very similar to this. Also, in terms of funding the research mission, national resources, again, are going to be stressed and likely to decline. So whatever research that we've done in the past on the federal dollar is likely to have to be revisited when those sources of federal funding decrease. So again, institutions across the country are all having to make very difficult decisions given these challenges. You've heard the term new normal. That term is meant to suggest that while we go through cycles in the United States of increased funding, decreased funding, increased funding, that it's not likely to increase anytime future. This new baseline low level is what we're likely to live with for a while. So your University of Toledo, like most institutions, back on January 1, 2011, $20 million disappeared. The federal government provided something called stimulus funds for a 2-year period following the 2008 election, and on January 1st, 2012, that money expired. Yes?
I just have a question just on that statement alone.
Yeah.
So you said in 2007?
The recession occurred in 2007-08.
Okay, and we were then bailed out.
And then the federal government, for all institutions of higher education, bailed out for a 2-year period of time.
So why wasn't UT that year starting to do something that it's doing now? Why was it not being proactive?
Well, the institution was making steps to reduce the budget. In fact, most of them occurred in the administrative areas. But a year ago, the Board of Trustees decided that if we were to try to adjust to the loss of funding in one step, it would be too traumatic for the institution. So they decided to spend $15 million out of the savings account to buy ourselves 1 year to give us more time to try to find the ways to adjust to this loss of funding.
And I agree with that, but I'm saying, so we found out that year we're $20 million in debt, and we're giving money to answer. But we put it off, is what it seems like to me as a student, until this year.
We did.
Wait, because the money's now gone for good. I don't understand.
It's always gone for good. The question is, though, why didn't we make $20 million a cut 1 year ago instead of today, and it was simply a decision to give ourselves more time to think through it more, so that we didn't make any rash decision a year ago. Evidently, we had the ability to at least buy ourselves 1 year of time to think through this. And that's the answer. It's a judgment call, though. Some would argue, should have taken care of it a year ago. Others would argue if we had done that, we probably would have made some rash, quick, dumb decisions that we would have regretted. Better to take our time, really think it through. We can afford to do that for 1 year. Let's take the time. And that was the decision that was made.
To elaborate then on that, so like I spoke to you earlier, I looked at UT's financial history.
Mm-hmm.
And the one major consistency I find is nearly every department at UT goes over budget, which is a bad thing. And that's what's leading to what we are in today. And we're forcing to make changes, which it happens. Regardless of where UT or not, it just happens everywhere. I just don't understand who holds administration accountable and why are we not being proactive?
Well, here's what I know. I've been here 5 years. Every year that I've been here, we've taken a state funding cut. Not as severe as on January 1st, 2012, but every year we've had X millions of dollars, usually single digit, to a funding loss. And every year until last year, we always made the cuts in the year that we took them. The faculty is represented by a union called AAUP. They hired an independent financial analyst to come in and to review the institution's finances. And the independent accountant said, actually, you're in pretty good financial shape. And the question that I got is, why are you saying we have a $36 million funding cut, given that we had an outside analyst come in and say, no, actually, the university's been pretty good and is in okay financial. Well, it's because of this one-time big loss on January 1st and the decision to buy ourselves a year. So I don't know exactly what you're referring to. Is every department's over budget? Because I'll need to look at that and make sure that we're reading it the correct way. Sometimes brackets mean credit. For the accountants in the room, mean a debit or a credit. It doesn't necessarily mean they were over budget. It just signifies that it's a credit entry. So sometimes it's a little confusing when you look at that. Now, I will say this. I talked about $20 million. The number on the screen here is 36. So what's the difference?
That's an estimated number. We actually don't know, I thought.
Well, that's true. That's exactly right. Part of this is the fact that it's an estimate. But the other thing is, for the last 2 years, on top of losing the $20 million in federal stimulus monies, we've also had enrollment declines that exceeded what we projected. So that number has grown from 20 to a higher number closer to 30. And then there are 100 other variables in the university budget as large as ours that cause this estimate to be now a number that is pretty significant. Now, we're an $800 million entity per year. $300 million per year is the hospital and the clinics. $500 million a year is the academic enterprise. But $36 million, even on a $500 million enterprise, is a big number, especially every year when we budget to break even. So this is significant, and it would be significant if it were the first budget cut we had taken. But it's not. It's a significant cut following a series of smaller yet substantial cuts over a number of years. So this is why, again, this is a difficult time. It's why all the analysts are saying all over the country, universities are having these types of meetings and conversation. And what we need to do is look at everything that we do in the name of teaching, research, and service, and just look at that broad spectrum of activities and ask ourselves, what is core? What is most important? Make sure you fully fund those activities. And when you run out of money, you just simply can't do all that you used to do in the name of teaching, research, and service, until you grow your revenue base back, which will take time. So this is a listing of what other universities across the country have done as they have faced similar financial challenges to ours. So again, it says here this is an inventory of what other universities are doing to address fiscal challenges. It's just an inventory, it's a menu. And the groups that worked on this plan looked at what other universities were doing and asked the question, does this make sense for us? And in many cases, we said, yep, this makes sense for us. We've got to do that. This is a look at, since 1971, the percentage of tenured and tenure-track faculty on universities across the country have been declining, from 77% in 1971 all the way down to 51% in 2009. So more of your courses that you're taking are being taught by non-tenured or tenure-track faculty, and that's the case across the country, and it's pretty standard linear decline that is likely to persist. Why is that? Primarily for economic reasons. As universities have lost funding, rather than replace retiring tenure-track faculty with more expensive tenure-track faculty, most universities have been forced to rely on part-time or non-tenure-track faculty simply because the compensation levels are less. Now, interestingly, the surveys that I have seen from students, there is no discernible difference in teaching evaluations on whether or not a faculty member is tenured or non-tenured or part-time. Interestingly, having a blend of both doesn't seem to be a problem. Yeah.
Now, when you say tenured and non-tenured, you're referring to, like, you know, someone that has a PhD in that subject over a lecture, correct?
It's a little bit more complicated than that. Let me talk to you a little bit about who's actually here teaching you. There are, there's a category of faculty that are kind of our premier elite faculty that we would call our tenured and tenure-track. These are the people who all have what are called terminal degrees, PhDs in many cases, other types of terminal degrees in other disciplines. They come in as an assistant professor. They earn tenure. They're promoted to associate professor. Some are then promoted later to full professor. Those are our tenured and tenure-track. Those are some of the 51%. There are other faculty members here that are called lecturers. They can't earn tenure, but they are a full-time faculty member that we pay a full-time wage and benefits, and they teach many more classes than the tenured and tenure-track faculty do. I'm probably not too far off. The average tenure-track faculty teaches probably 2 classes a semester. The average lecturer teaches probably closer to 4 per semester. Okay. Then, in addition to tenured and tenure-track and lecture, we then have this group of primarily part-time faculty that are teaching upwards of 50% of the courses across the country. They're teaching courses on a course-by-course basis. They're not even full-time employees at the university. They don't earn benefits. But they're teaching probably on average 50% of your courses.
And these courses could vary, like, between different subjects, correct?
They could vary and often do. They would probably teach more of your undergraduate courses than they would your graduate courses, the part-time faculty. Okay. This then breaks it into the various categories. I won't go through this, but you can see how the various classes that I just explained to you, how across the country the mix of faculty is changing over time. This is a look at the number of staff people that support a university from 1976 to 2009, and the difference between public universities and private universities. So for example, every 100 students on campus in 2009 at a public university, there were on average 16 staff people supporting 100 students. Yeah.
Your graphs where you had, like, say, the 51% is tenured, does that take into account all universities or just universities that offer doctorate degrees and are research universities?
I think it was all 4-year universities.
So that could be skewed in the lower direction because it does take into account non-research universities, which is not what you do.
Yeah, we'll look at those numbers in a minute. You'll get a sense of that.
Okay.
Okay. And these are just some of the examples of some of the kind of the technological advancements that you're very aware of, very accustomed to, and how these technologies, again, are changing the way that we deliver some courses. It's creating new opportunities in how we can engage the world. And it's changing the way some of our historic parts of our institution, like libraries, are staffed and their functions. And so lots and lots of change, especially since I was in college, which is now a long time ago. Okay. Whoops. I actually triggered a YouTube video. I didn't even do that on what a flipped classroom is. You can watch that at your convenience. I'll go back to this. And again, one of the things that in our survey of students that you guys tell us is that the experiential learning opportunities that we provide are very much appreciated and usually lead to job offers, which for many of you is very important. And so we're looking for ways to create more and more experiential learning opportunities. What do I mean by that? Internships, co-ops, study abroad, undergraduate research opportunities, service learning, et cetera, et cetera. Let me go here and then I'll go here for next.
What survey are you referring to?
We did a survey of 18 focus groups of students in the last 90 days that were conducted here in Toledo, Oxford, Columbus, and Bowling Green, where we surveyed students who chose to come to UT and students who chose not to come to UT, their parents and high school counselors. And we've got some of that on videotape if you'd ever like to watch it. It's pretty revealing, very interesting.
Wait, so there were students involved in this survey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Undergraduate only?
Undergraduate only. Yep. In this case, we have other surveys beyond that, but that was the particular focus group. You want that? Okay.
He covered my question.
Oh, we did? Okay, great. So back in 2012, again, more and more people just rendering, this Moody's, for those who are familiar with Moody's, is one of the more independent, respected analysts of all types of industries, including higher ed. So when they put something out, it's usually, again, independent and worth reading. This was their analysis of higher ed back in January 2012. And they recently updated in January 2013, recently, last month, and basically said, still looks tough. In fact, it looks even tougher out there for most universities. So, again, for those of you who are interested, I won't go through a lot of this, but what this graph attempts to show is that beginning in 1944, the federal government took steps that created more and more resources flowing into public universities, and universities of all types, frankly, with a series of federal pieces of legislation that expanded access and funding available. And higher education grew to be the envy of the world in the United States. Then beginning in the 1990s, there were a set of historical events that caused that funding to begin to decline. And then in 2008 is when there was a significant shock to the system. And then the question is, what's next? What does the new normal look like going down? This is what all of higher education is responding to at this point. So again, for Moody's, the United States education sector has hit a critical juncture in its evolution of its business model. Most universities will have to lower their cost structures to achieve long-term financial sustainability and to fund future initiatives. Better strategic leadership, predicated on improved governance and management, will be the backbone of transforming university operations and taking on the entrenched cross drivers of the business model: shared governance, classroom instruction, tenure, and student life services. So, this next slide basically explains to people how in the world do you adjust an $800 million budget. If you remove the hospital, a $500 million budget, how do you take $36 million out of that system and still remain true to your core mission and your core elements? How do you do that? And this graphic, which again is probably, if I took the amount of time that I would normally spend, could take 30 minutes, which I will not do. But it essentially looks at the university in terms of what parts of the universities have positive cash flow and what parts of the university require subsidy. And so as you break down the different things that a university does, you'll see that the teaching element overall is a positive cash flow. The research and the service elements, though, are negative cash flow. The administrative support areas are negative cash flow. So without making any value judgment about if anything is better or worse, that's not the point of this slide. They're all important. Everything on this slide is important, especially to the tradition, history, and all that universities have done for mankind. What this slide, though, shows is how does it get paid for? And if you're experiencing $36 million fewer resources flowing into the institution, you have to adjust this model to essentially make the negatives less negative or the positive more positive. And so what this is trying to do is to educate people enough on the steps that you go through, not changing the basic character of the institution. Right now, the University of Toledo is identified as a research university at the high level, not at the very high level. There are 108 universities that occupy that category, represented by Harvard. But the University of Toledo is part of 99 institutions that, based on the level of research activity that they engage in, is characterized by the Carnegie Foundation as a research university in the high category. So when you are dealing with, again, the loss of $36 million, you're essentially adjusting the amount of unfunded research and unfunded service that you're doing, or you're trying to find a way to make the teaching enterprise make up for what you're losing in order to keep a balanced budget, a sustainable university. And this is what any university is having to do. So as we visit with our faculty, what we're essentially saying is this: as much as we value what you're doing in the name of unfunded service and unfunded research, we have 36 million less resources to do that. We need you to redirect some amount of your time to the teaching of students, which is what generates the positive cash flow. And so we're asking them to, again, follow kind of a step process that's illustrated here, knowing that we are going to probably adjust somewhat the level of research activity we do, but not significantly. And that in the future, as we grow these resources back, hopefully then we can do additional more amount of unfunded research. Why don't we start here?
Yeah.
New faces.
Well, I think I'm a graduate student in psychology.
Mm-hmm.
All my friends are graduate students in psychology. I actually chose Toledo over a more prestigious university and worked in the lab and work in.
Right.
I promised I was going to get to do research I like, had interdisciplinary, opportunities. And most of our research, by its very nature, is cognitive, like it's unfunded or partially funded.
Right.
And we needed for our professional development, it's pedagogical. We also have like a lot of undergraduates that is pedagogical opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're concerned about is whether or not this will lower our research productivity or our advisors' ability to do research, and in doing so, lower our opportunities to either do research and get research careers. None of us want to be in academia or interact and interface with undergraduates with research experience. Can you give us an assurance that this 5-year plan will not significantly reduce the research output productivity of highly productive say psychology or say economics sociology laboratories?
What I can do is say this: we will not disadvantage any current student, but it might affect what offerings are available to students who have not yet enrolled at this university. We're having a conversation about what can we sustain in the future. We will not disadvantage current students in making whatever transition we need to make for the loss of $36 million. That's what I can do. But I can't promise you that this program will be able to sustain the same levels of unfunded research that it has in the past with $36 million fewer dollars in the future. But we will not disadvantage current students to make that transition.
If I could just ask one additional follow-up then. So we actually play a big role in the process of interviewing and vetting future graduate students. In the future, what am I supposed to tell? Because even this year, I was I didn't really get involved in that process because I wasn't sure what to tell them, not to be disrespectful. I mean, I just don't know.
When you say them, who are you talking about again?
I'm talking about people who are applying to work in our graduate program with the expectation that they will come here and do research.
So students who are applying to into your current program.
Yeah, and then I didn't really know what to say to them this year, so I more or less avoided them. And in the future, and I hate to do that. I mean, I love my lab. I like the people I work with. I hate to have to avoid, future potential graduate students might be talented because I don't know whether to tell them what a PhD program is going to look like in 4 or 5 years. So, what am I supposed to do as somebody who wants to be involved and promote my program?
Well, you should answer honestly the same way that we're talking about tonight, so that because they're likely to hear the same thing at other places they're applying to. So that what everyone should do is be open and frank and honest about, in the future, this program has had this type of research activity. We're not yet sure until we make this adjustment, which should occur over the next 3 or 4 months. Or if we don't get it all done this year, maybe the board will buy us some additional time. But in the future, it will clear up. It will be more clear. But now I think you just be honest with them and say, things are going to change in higher ed, and we'll have to see how that impacts the decision you make. Let's go back here to a new face, and I'll come back to you.
So I just want to make sure it's clear, the unfunded research, you're going to be slicing TA ships?
No, not necessarily. It may not be TA ships.
Right?
Huh?
That's the unfunded research, you're talking about the graduate students that don't.
Well, it's not as simple as that. TAs are kind of a different.
Well, let me rephrase it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will be affected?
Will TAs be affected?
Yeah, somehow.
I don't know yet. Most likely no, but again, it's a complicated area because in some areas TAs actually are teaching, helping support the teaching enterprise, which again, on this graphic you see has a big plus. So why would we jeopardize something that helps us produce a positive cash flow? So in that case, it's likely that you wouldn't see changes to the TA. On the other hand, had you used the term RA, research assistant, well, now they're in a different category of the university, which again has a negative cash flow. So again, if the only purpose of that graduate assistant is to be a research assistant, then maybe in some cases those folks might be affected, but not the current students. It's what we're going to do in the future with these issues that is at stake at the moment.
Overall, the amount of research going on at UT decrease?
I believe that the amount of research going on in the United States will decrease because the federal funding is going to decrease. That's what I believe is going to happen. By how much, yet to be determined. The federal government, I think, as you know, has got its own set of budgetary problems it ultimately has to deal with. If and when it deals with those and to what extent it impacts federal funding of research at universities, I think many universities are going to make adjustments to what they can afford to continue to do.
Thank you.
You bet. We'll go here.
Follow-up question for you?
Yeah.
Most science research at UT actually are funded by other sources or they aren't directly funded by UT, so how are they being affected by the funds that UT provides? They aren't providing.
Well, as you can see up there, research fits into 3 categories: unfunded, partially funded, and fully funded. The fully funded research is typically from a federal source. The best type of grant that you can get is from the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. They fully fund the research. They provide even a funding for the indirect cost of supporting research, and they allow the principal investigator's salary and benefits to be loaded into the grant, so that theoretically they're fully funding the research. Now, unfortunately, not all of our, probably not even a majority of our research fits into that last category. That is at best break even at best. A lot of our research fits into the partially funded or the totally unfunded part. And in that case, it's simply the institution's resource. It's a piece of your tuition dollars. It's a piece of state appropriations. It's a piece of the philanthropy to the institution that is funding this unfunded and partially funded research, which is the reason why it has to be subsidized. Okay, yes, sir.
We're about a fourth way through the plan, through the PowerPoint.
Yep.
And I've read the entire PowerPoint, and there is not one thing in there on athletics.
That's because athletics doesn't report to the provost. That's part of a different plan of the university. This is just a plan for a segment of the university. But we can talk about athletics.
I just wanted to make a point in the sense that we pay general fees, which is a $54 million budget, which right there is an option that could solve this and we don't have to worry about anything.
Well, not
If we ask-
quite.
and say
As
if
you
we ask
point out,
students-
it's only-
If we ask students and see how they wanted to spend their money, it's a
Right.
$54 million budget. But if you look at general fee, students pay $20 million to athletics.
Okay.
What does the non-athlete student receive from that? What is return on that $20 million? That's,
Hey, it's a good
if you can
question.
answer it, I mean, that's just
No,
my
I can
question.
answer it. I'm not sure everybody's going to like the answer, but I can answer it. The answer is that it is part of the subsidized service mission of the institution. So again, when you're down 36 million, it's step 2 on my thing. I think you go and have that conversation. And every year that I've been a part of any university, which is now getting close to 20 years, we have a conversation about, is it worth having intercollegiate athletics and at what level? And to what level of subsidy? Because there are only probably a dozen intercollegiate athletic programs in the country that break even. Only a dozen, which means there's probably 1,500 that are being subsidized. And we're one of those.
There was a 2007, a master's student at UT did their master's thesis on general fees and specifically on athletics.
Right.
And our money from general fees is to subsidize athletics.
Right.
And I just don't, to me as a general student, still see the return.
Now, the argument for those who support intercollegiate athletics would be multifaceted, but it would include something like this. In fact, I was at an institution early in my career that did not have an intercollegiate athletic program. And guess what? We added one while I was there. Why did we do that? Because we did survey research and found that the reason why students were choosing to go to other universities and not to ours is because we didn't have an athletics program. And it's not that simple. Then it translates into the prospective student's mind that this is therefore not a legitimate university. It must not be really that great if they don't have an intercollegiate athletics program. Now, that's not entirely rational to me, but what I've learned in advertising and marketing, that you can get really lost if you try to do what you think is rational, but that's just kind of the reality. So we added at that point a Division III non-scholarship, yet costly, and the students voted to a fee on themselves to support a Division III program. And since I've left that institution, since we added it, their enrollment has continued to grow. So the supporters of athletics would say, look, just look at the intercollegiate athletics program and view it as a marketing expense. And view it as the way to project yourself to a group of students who, rightly or wrongly, are going to base part of their decision on whether to come here based on you having that program. Now, that's part of the argument they would make. The other part of the argument they would make is, esprit de corps, community support. But again, I think it's the right question to ask, and I'm glad you asked it, because when $36 million disappears, you have to have these. But this isn't the only kind of conversation. You can have an equally difficult conversation about to what extent do we invest in the economic development of the region.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's a good one. You ought to have that. We do every year, and we debate it out, and then we set a level, and then we move forward. You can have the same kind of conversation on the Center for this, and the Center to cure this, and the Center to fix this social injustice, and the Center to do that. Because those are all also unfunded service activities. Every year we have those conversations. So these are very difficult but important conversations to have. Yes?
First of all, I would say my apologies for maybe drifting off the topic a little bit back onward.
Sure.
What does this whole thing impact, and how does it impact the organizations that fund those
The plan does call for more activities that would create more esprit de corps and better student life. So this plan does support the concept that student organizations are important because they create connectedness to the institution. So from a student-centeredness and a student satisfaction and a persistence issue, this plan is supportive of student organizations, student life, esprit de corps, And your representatives of your student senate, student government push those issues, and we concurred, and so that's a part of this plan. Yeah.
I have a question back on the research topics. I know you mentioned the NIH grants and that fully funded research is typically break even. Do you have any opinions or plans in this as to how you may direct what types of research we will continue to promote? Being a science major, there's always a debate over the merits in tough financial times of being a pure researcher versus applied research. Whereas applied research, I know we have, I don't know what it's called, the R3 building and everything, taking potential research projects that can become profitable businesses versus something that's research purely for the knowledge. Do you have any?
Well, we approach it in two ways in this plan. What we essentially say is there are 4 areas that we are going to invest in as an institution because they represent global significant issues pertaining to sustainability, to affordable health care, to personalized medicine, to how do we have a healthcare system that we can afford. So those are the areas that we've designated that we will make institutional investments to further that research because they try to help solve global problems and problems that are relevant to our area. The other thing that we do indirectly is to say, we're not going to tell the particular faculty member that they have to stop doing their unfunded research. We're simply going to tell them that we need you to teach on average 1 more course. And how then you adjust the rest of your work schedule to accommodate the other things that you do, that's up to you, that's up to your department, that's up to your college. So we don't try to kind of micromanage the solution from the top. We leave a lot of that to their discretion because some people will do what I've done. I mean, most people are just working longer hours these days to try to get done everything that's important to them. And just like me, I mean, there's certain things that I love to do. And if they make me work a little bit longer on something else, I'm still going to do this other thing because I love it so much. And to a large extent, our faculty are like that with their research. And a lot of, in fact, I was reading a book before I came here tonight, and it's showing that a lot of faculty are just working longer hours these days because they're not going to give it up because they love it so dearly. But it doesn't mean they're going to quietly accept the fact that they probably need to teach another course. They're going to be unhappy about that. And I suspect you're hearing some of that.
Yeah.
You're right.
You know, and I hear stuff from administration too, a little whiny faculty, blah, blah, blah. But I am worried as a researcher that the faculty that do already work long hours, that it maybe is being underestimated how much time goes into grant writing and overseeing research projects and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, like 1 more course may not seem like a lot if you have 6 students, but if it's another lecture and you don't have that TA,
Right.
then they're grading 200 more papers.
Yep.
You know, then I feel like the quality of teaching is going to go down, and also research.
Yeah.
So how are you planning to kind of manage that from above?
Well, all that I can say is that we have to adjust what we do to make up for the loss of $36 million. It's really not an option, so we have to do something. So we're going to have to do the teaching more because it's what sustains the institution. The trick is how to deal with the planned consequences and the unintended consequences. And again, we'll have to monitor it over time because we don't want the teaching to deteriorate. Quite the contrary. We want to try to do some things that help the teaching improve. And there are a lot of new tools today that might help do that. And we don't want to see our research activity fall, but that's a likely consequence unless faculty find ways to do it, to do more productively. Every plan, as I pointed out in the independent collegian, is a living document. We're constantly revisiting this plan. Are we seeing the kind of feedback that we expected? If not, let's make an adjustment. Let's make a turn. So even since this document was published on December the 17th, December 17th, it's probably gone through 20 small adjustments even in that short period of time. So this is a living document. Yes, sir.
I don't know if we'll get to this later in the presentation, but it kind of has to do with the blurred line between teaching and research. Again, being a science major, most of my professors who are tenured faculty are brilliant. They've got their PhDs. They've had probably near zero classes on actually how to teach.
Right.
Some of them may do it on their own. They'll go out of their way to go to conferences, to take classes, where the lecturers, lots of them have education background. I'm a chemistry major, so some of the lecturers have chemical education degrees, and they can teach probably arguably better, so they don't know quite as much.
Right.
So if you go to their office hours, you might not get those finer details. To improve this, with your movement either to less tenured faculty or to tenured faculty who teach more, is the university planning on doing anything to offer more resources for the actual faculty, or even mandate it? I don't think that would be a bad idea for these tenured faculty to learn how to teach a little bit better than just coming out here.
It's a great question because, again, having been through a PhD program myself, they give you no guidance in terms of your teaching. But you're expected to be, well, he's a smart guy, he'll figure it out. That's kind of the attitude. And a lot of people don't. They struggle with it. And so part of this plan is the creation of a new university teaching center that's already up and running. So it's part of the early implementation and it's hard to mandate faculty. They don't respond too well to mandates. But we are offering it, and the response from faculty has been very positive. So the idea is to provide better resources, whether it be TAs to help with larger class sizes, or a university teaching center that teaches them some of these new tools and techniques that are available to be better. We've got a gentleman who's leading that effort called Ben Pryor, who's committed to doing that. We've got some great people on the outside who are helping. Apple Higher Education are making resources available to help faculty as well.
Will students be able to see who of their potential teachers will select classes have been through those?
That's a great idea. I'll put that on the table and see if we can do that.
I think a lot of us, we would really like to keep our tenure track faculty because it's, one of those sit-down office hours where, they have the finer details of that knowledge. We really want to get from university education versus, a lecturer at a community college side of thing. But to be able to pick the ones they don't have that higher degree of knowledge plus have taken courses on how to actually communicate.
Right. New face in the back, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Just real quick, this might be a yes or no answer, but, I pretty much everyone else heard outcry from teachers and students about this being expected to teach more. But I understand where you're coming from about the budget on track. Now, have these people who are upset about teaching more brought any alternative budget cuts to your?
Generally, that's not been the case. Generally, that's not been, they struggle with that. And we put that out there just the way you did. I have told people, look, my ego's not in this. If you've got a better idea, put it on the table. And if it's something that we hadn't thought about, let's try it. But that has generally not been the case.
We haven't really got to this yet, but I went through your slideshow.
Okay.
And you get to the point where you increase teaching for all tenure track faculty, and then you also have a mandate on the minimum of students in every course.
Yep. So let's skip around since on this pace we'll be here till 2 in the morning. So let's skip around. So give me 5 minutes to get there because I'm going to skip quickly there. Okay. Is that all right? Great. Let me talk to you. Let me show you what is kind of the heart of the plan. So again, these slides that you're not going to see but are available to anyone who would want a copy is a lot of this survey data that we did. So in this particular case, for example, we surveyed 1,381 undergraduate students as to why they didn't come to UT. And so we've got data suggesting. Now, you don't think that's relevant, or you care about graduate students, don't you?
I care about graduate students and undergraduate students.
Okay.
The fact that you're going to people who are not here, when you're claiming that it's a student-centered
focus.
Well,
When you
it's-
haven't talked to students, you haven't talked to graduate students, you haven't talked to
Well-
potentially adult learners. What kind of undergraduate students did you?
Actually, you have
Was it
great
convenient
leadership on something called the Graduate Student Council. Great.
I
There-
go to
there's-
them.
So, and they are great. The president's name is Josh, and I can't remember what the vice president's name is. Anybody remember what her name is? Monica? Oh, hey Josh, how you doing? They are great, and they have been invested the time, meeting after meeting, to help us think through these issues. So it's not that we don't care, it's just the fact that part of our solution to the economic crisis is going to be attracting more undergraduate students to our institution. So there is a heavy emphasis on how to do that because it's so critical to solving the problem that affects everybody. So that's, and, you know, roughly, what is it? You know, 78% of our students are undergraduate students. So there is a little bit of an overemphasis, as you point out, on that, for that reason. Okay. The core of the plan, again, kind of walks through, you know, kind of what are important, what are the programs that best help students persist through their educational experience. So again, this would be an example of programs that we would look to invest in, make sure that they're strong, available to students. There is a section of the plan that goes through a difficult, but it's intended to be kind of a brutally honest look at what are our institution's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. This was based on the groups coming together using the clicker technology, and it's a way of getting consensus from large numbers of people on what they view. And then ultimately what they did was help us to then identify what are the big problems that we need to solve to move the institution forward. There are a lot of strategic plans that are beautifully written but never implemented, or beautifully written but never really get to the difficult issues of what needs to change, what needs to be solved. We aspire to be something different from that. And so the key part of the plan begins on page 99, which is, here's the big problem that we have, and here's the solution that we're going to pursue. So the brand problem, the MOOC problem, the underprepared student problem, the faculty problem, the funding problem, the structure problem, and then a summary of all of these problems and the potential solutions. So this is the core of the plan. This is what we ultimately say, if we want the institution that we aspire to be, these are the things that we're going to have to do that. And if we do that 5 years from now, we can look forward to an institution that's different in this way. That if we implement these things right, if all the people's input was correct, and if we implement effectively and skillfully, we should have an institution 5 years from now that is nationally known and has a nationally known and distinguished undergraduate honors college with large numbers of well-prepared students that then balance the large numbers of underprepared students that we already have, who earn their undergraduate degrees, many in 3 years, and who are then advancing quickly into advanced degree programs, because essentially the baccalaureate degree today is so much less powerful in the market than what it was 40 years ago. Part of the message that we should be delivering students today is to not to be thinking only about a baccalaureate degree, but in some type of advanced degree program. The undergraduate degree 40 years ago was only held by 5% of the U.S. population. Today it's held by 30% of the population, and as much as 60% of the population has some amount of higher education. So if you really want to distinguish yourself in the marketplace and have the same kind of market power that college graduates had 40 years ago, we need to get people to think about the advanced degree program. But because they're on limited budgets, we also need to think about how to get them into those programs more quickly so that they can afford to do that. We'll also, if we do this correctly, we will grow in our graduate and our professional programs. If we do this correctly, we should be better at using the new academic technologies, the new learning methods, to improve the learning that all of our students experience. The overall student experience should be better in all the areas that most matter to students. We should, 5 years from now, be known as the University of Experiential Learning. And equally important, 5 years from now, we should be the institution that lowered the cost of higher education to create a sustainable economic model for ourself that provides sufficient resources to ensure academic quality. This is what we're trying to create now and into the future.
I like the plan, but I guess my question is, so you have your 10 general problems, this is from your perspective, and your department perspective, and your 10 proposed solutions, and then you say this will happen. What if this doesn't happen? Because we don't know what will happen with these changes. Is there a contingency plan?
Look, like I said, every day this plan is being adjusted. I adjust this plan almost every week, and I'm thinking about it every minute, it seems. So this plan is 80% of well, that's not true. 80% of my job is putting together the team, the right team who can make this plan come to life. Because what you will find in your studies, many of you, is that organizations don't succeed or fail based on whether or not they have a good strategic plan or not. The research shows that organizations fail based on whether they implement their plan well or not. So my job is first and foremost putting together the team of people who can skillfully implement this plan to give it its best chance of success. The next part of my job is to keep the plan relevant, though. And again, one of the great mentors that I had in my life said, I only hope to be right 7 out of 10 times. 3 times that I'm wrong, I do not let my ego get in the way, and I turn on a dime as soon as I know that I'm wrong. And I try not to make the same 3 mistakes twice. But then he said, most importantly, I never, however, will ever hold myself to being right 100% of the time, because the only people who don't make mistakes are the people who aren't trying to do anything significant with their life. That was one of the best lessons. That's totally freeing, and it's the reality of life. You have to take some risks to do something great. And so we're going to get some of this wrong. But I hope that we're so nimble and quick in responding with your help that we will make the mistake and correct it before most universities even try to correct the problem. That's my goal.
On the issue of your branding, where a large portion of it is to be an honors college, my understanding was that you want to expand it greatly in size from its current 5%, which you cannot currently fill with people who fit the requirements, to, I've heard, up to 20%, which makes it sound more like it would be the university of people who belong in college. University sounds like the college being underprepared, which is people who have no business being in a four-year university. This nation has a great system of community colleges, which we shouldn't be competing with. We should be trying to strive to be more like Harvard, not to steal people from Owens, which is what it seems like your goal is.
And 50% of this university agrees with you. That was what was most interesting to me when we got these 5 groups together that I talked about. We asked the question that you're addressing to every single group. And without exception, the vote on that was kind of 52-48, 51-49. We are very divided on this issue as to whether or not our open access mission is a positive or a negative. Half the university says it's positive, and it's the reason I get up every morning. Half the university says it's wrong, these people shouldn't even be in college. We ought to try to become a more selective. We are very divided on that issue. Now, I will say this. Economically, we probably can't even afford to make that decision right now. But it is a tension on campus. Our solution to that problem is to try to be both. An institution that is great and designed for well-prepared students, and an institution that is great and designed for underprepared students, a great institution that's designed for the middle student, the adult student, the online student, the graduates. That's the idea of the portal college, to try to be many different universities to different types of students and to try to do all those things well. It remains to be seen whether that can be done, but that's what we're going to try to to do because we can't, even if we wanted to economically, we couldn't turn our backs on any segment of student at the moment, even if we wanted to. And right now, we don't know if we want to or not.
My apologies if you answered this one right. But how exactly are you assessing which portal new students fall into, like underprepared or well-prepared?
Yeah, the idea is that we're going to be better at diagnosing, assessing every student that comes in. One of the ideas to put all students through something called an assessment center. It's something that we have already right now as part of our adult college. And we're actually thinking about how to get more and more students to go through that don't obviously fit in one of these portals or not. And so, for example, even the so-called well-prepared student that looks great on paper, we think could benefit going through an assessment center because they may not be equally great in all levels, and if they are great, they may be able to place out in this assessment center and shorten the amount of time to degree completion. So, but that early diagnosis is kind of a critical part of what we're thinking about and how to get people into the correct portal from the beginning. Over here? Yeah, thanks.
Can you talk about the faculty work order aspect of the
Yeah,
plan?
yeah, because I'm getting to that. Okay. So here's the controversy. And it arises from strategy number 9. And it basically says, how do you solve a $36 million? Here's what you do. Here are the steps that you go through. And see number 2 on here, and increase instructional productivity. That's the part of the plan that we're currently trying to implement to solve part, not all. This doesn't solve the 36 million, but it does solve a significant piece of the 36 million. Then the question becomes, well, how do you implement that? Well, so beginning, and in order to affect next academic year, we have to start now, based on the timing of everything. So here's what we sent out to our dean, our department chairs. We sent out 2 things. We said, look, most all of our faculty on the main campus are represented by a union called the AUP, American Association of University Professors. And we have what's called a collective bargaining agreement. And in that collective bargaining agreement, there are 2 different collective bargaining agreements, one for tenure track faculty and one for lecturers. And in that collective bargaining agreement, it says that we can assign up to 12 semester credit hours to our tenure and tenure track faculty. And in the other collective bargaining agreement, it says that we can assign up to 15 semester credit hours to our lecturer. Okay? Then what it says in those same basic agreements, those collective bargaining agreements, is that number can then be adjusted downward based on other types of work the faculty do. And our problem has been that we have been very, very generous in terms of those reductions, to the point that we have many, many faculty teaching very few students. And again, as part of solving this $36 million problem, we just need more faculty to teach more students. And so these are the new guidelines that were intended to put some parameters on just how many reductions can every faculty member take. And our goal is, once you get to that actual teaching load, that's a number that's higher than it has been in the past. Okay? So again, basically says if you're tenure track, you start off with 12 credit hours. You know that's on average 4 3-hour classes. But then if they're doing any amount of other significant faculty work, and most faculty, frankly, are doing other significant faculty work. It could be anything from unfunded research. It could be advising. It could be they're the program coordinator for the X program. Okay, we automatically give them then a reduction of 1 course. Okay, so now they're down to 9. Then what we say, if you are a part of and making significant contributions to one of these institutionally designated research centers, the 4 that I've talked about, we'll give you another 3 release. Okay. Then, if you have a grant that allows you to buy out some amount of your time, go for it. Buy out as much as you want to, because economically it works if you have that. You can take it all the way down to 0 if you've got that. But not everyone has that. And then what we say is, hey, if there's some unusual case exception, for example, there's a lab that only holds 14 people, then we'll make case exceptions for things that just don't make sense. If we have students in a program that need to get through, we'll accept that, but it will trigger a conversation about what to do about future students. And then what it says, that's the faculty member's actual load. We still reserve 20% of the 40-hour work week, though, for unfunded research beyond that for every faculty member. And we still reserve 10% of a 40-hour week for every faculty member for any unfunded service activity they want to be engaged in. And these are the new guidelines that we sent out. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. One is related to this side, so I'm going to ask that first. In certain colleges like NSM, you have faculty members who teach and advise. Whereas
Teach and advise, yeah.
Whereas, say, in the College of Engineering, there are staff whose full-time job is to advise. When you look at that total actual teaching load, where does that play a part?
Well, there's two answers to your question. The best answer to your question is that we're actually leaning in the direction of putting professional advisors in every college. And so it won't be an issue anymore. That's where we're leaning heavily right now. In the meantime, though, it would be accounted for in that other significant faculty work. But again, my intent, my hope is by next fall to have professional advisors in all colleges. Because when we talk to the students who most enjoy their advising are from those colleges that have the professional advisors. Now, no, there wasn't a second part, was it? Yeah, there was a second part. Yeah, yeah.
It's back on the question that the earlier asked. In regards to the perception of the university and the kind of education we're giving to students. Is there a plan for the current TPS program of offering full rides to students that graduate with 3.0? Because to my understanding, that current program is potentially so, in my eyes, as a student who is not part of that program, simply because I'm out of state, I don't see that as a gain for the university.
Yeah,
Spend
I
money
believe.
and waste it on students that are not.
I believe that
in the
before
state.
I took this new job, they discontinued that. I don't think that program is available anymore.
But we still do it though.
Well, those current students are
getting
but I don't think I don't think it's available for additional students.
That's all I,
Yeah.
is it going to be some of those things?
I don't think so. I think they've already. Hi.
I've got a few.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Actually, you sort of mentioned, I was going to ask about the riders program. I was going to ask if we were thinking so 20%.
Yeah.
With that, can you give like a brief overview of like the cash breakdown? Because I've heard lots of different things. Like, I know and how things are earmarked as well. Because you're planning on renovating the Honors College in McKinnon, which I've heard a few different estimates, like that's $500,000. Now, where's that money coming from? Is it money from the state that can only be used for funding? I don't know.
Yeah, so let me take 2 hours to go through these.
Wait, I got the 6,000.
No, but the reason I put this up here is to show that if you download the plan, if you get the plan from us, there is an income statement in the plan that shows college by college whether or not they're an entity that we're subsidizing or one that is providing the cash flow that then goes to subsidize other colleges. The second part of your question, though, gets to an issue that a lot of people struggle with, which is the difference between operating funds and capital funds. Now, a lot of people know the basic difference, but a lot of people don't. So let me just put everybody on an equal playing field here. Operating funds are think of it like your annual cash budget, okay? It's what you take in a year, it's what you spend in a year, and ultimately that's got to be balanced in some ways, or otherwise you rack up credit card debt and you get in a lot of trouble, okay? And it works for institutions the same way. You've got to have annual money coming in every year, and you've got to restrict your expenses to that annual income. And that, what I'm just describing, are called operating funds. Capital funds, on the other hand, are more like your savings account. It's money that you've saved over the years because you know one day you want to buy a car or you need to buy a car. Same thing for universities. We save money because we know one day this building's going to need a new roof. Or we know one day this building is going to be so dilapidated and deteriorated that you're going to have to replace it in some way. Those are called capital, one-time kind of capital funds. And people either use their savings account to do it, or if they buy a home, they go borrow money. When we borrow money, we issue bonds. When people borrow money, it's usually a mortgage to buy a house. Okay? But those in and out of operating funds every year must balance. But it's a whole different kind of set of financing for these capital type expenditures, for buildings, for equipment, for replacing rugs and roofs and things like that. So I get the question all the time, how can you be spending money to renovate McKinnon Hall when you have a $36 million problem? The answer is because I've got a $36 million problem in my operating funds, but I'm using the capital money, my savings account that I've saved up for, to put a fresh coat of paint and new carpet in McKinnon Hall and to replace some furniture that's worn out. And if you don't do those things, you're not going to have an institution that people want to come to, and you're going to create even more of a problem for yourself. So you can't afford not to keep the place current and attractive to people who have choices at the same time, even though you've got an operating problem. Doing one doesn't solve the other problem.
I have a few questions about the teacher class movement.
Yeah, I'm moving that one next. Okay, that was the next thing I was going to. So we were looking at the new teaching load guidelines, and then the next thing that we also issued on January the 7th were the new minimum target class sizes. And we talked to you about this. In the past, they have been, I guess I can use the pointer on the they're in these were the numbers in the past. 24 for undergraduate, and we're essentially telling people now to shoot for 30. Because most of the research that's ever been explained to me says that the pedagogy or the learning that occurs in a classroom is not going to change between 24 and 30. So if you're needing to generate cash flow from more of your teaching, you're not going to create problems by going from 24 to 30. So we shot that number up. And if we do, we then use the case-by-case exception to exempt them. So for example, we've already exempted, for example, writing composition classes. Those have been exempted, and we'll look to exempt more as we finalize this process over the next 7 days. And then for the graduate and PhD courses, we're essentially saying we need to try to shoot for cohorts of 15 for graduate courses. We need to build programs such that we have cohorts of a minimum number of 15. And if we can't, because this is an area that we're consuming huge amounts of university resources, we need to make some hard decisions about which programs to grow and which programs that ultimately we may not be, and I didn't mean to point to your particular program. We haven't made that decision, by the way.
Programs?
Right, no, not yours. But we need to have some of those issues. And then the last number is the doctoral issues. What this is intended to do is to set a different goal, to say the status quo we can't live with. We have to set a new goal to see if we can generate a conversation to get there. Yeah.
In particular, speaking from the perspective of the math department, you would never get these numbers.
Well, never's a long time.
Currently, in course with 5 people, it
Right.
includes doctoral.
Right. We have 754 courses with fewer than 5 students in every course. That is a situation we probably can't afford. Now, whether we can get to 15 or 8 at the doctoral level, you're right, we may not get there, but we have to shoot a little bit higher than what we've shot for currently.
Like my current question is I'm in a course where I'm the only graduate.
Right.
If you would, and you could say, well, we want to cancel those courses. The problem is you have effectively then made your math department not competitive with other math departments, so I have no incentive to be here versus the surrounding schools' math departments.
Yeah, but just remember this. We are one of probably only 20 universities in the country, especially at the public level, that have the breadth of academic programs that we have. We can still be a lot better than most universities by getting rid of a few programs. I mean, unless you want veterinary medicine or dentistry, we've just about got it here, and that's not the case at most universities. So we may have to be a little bit more like other universities where we narrow the breadth, because right now we're on the extreme side of the scale in terms of what we offer. And because we do that, We just have these tiny little courses that consume so much faculty time that, again, when we had $36 million more we could afford to do, I don't know that we can do that now. That's the conversation that we're trying to trigger by setting these higher targets. You want to follow up? Yeah.
Yes, the main concern I have is you are a very competitive engineering school at the moment.
Right.
If you look at any competitive engineering school, they also have a very good math department, a physics department. Both of those I know would not exceed these numbers. And with your current plan, with these numbers would be cut, which would then drive all the faculty from those two departments away and greatly damage the engineering program.
And we would not do anything to damage our engineering program. I can tell you that.
And what about engineering as opposed to any other program?
That's part of the conversation we need to have. And in somewhere between 3 months and a year, we'll probably have this thing back balanced again, and then it'll be real clear about which programs will teach out and then terminate, and which programs will actually plan to grow. But the goal is, in the end, to have more graduate students, not less. That is the goal. But which programs is the key question at this point. Because we need at least a critical mass in enough programs to be able to afford all of those programs. And that's the hard realities. And you can understand the anxiety, not knowing how this is going to play out. It just takes time to analyze all of this and get all the voices that want to be a part of the conversation to give them that chance. It just takes a long time. So you're always battling. How long do I keep people in limbo versus how soon do I shut conversation off and then people complain that they didn't have a chance to be heard? That's the tension that you're going to find throughout your career, right? That's probably the tension you face in your deliberations, Lauren.
I have a few questions concerning this. For the classes that don't meet the minimum, would that class count as the retirement for the teacher workload, or would that not?
It's probably going to count for a while, and we're going to try to develop a plan with that group of faculty to say we either grow it or someday we decide that it's not going to count and therefore maybe we don't continue. But for a while, it's probably going to count for a while. The main thing at this point is we need to trigger, that's the phrase I keep using, we need to use this to trigger the conversation, because not having the conversation is the only thing that we can't do. Yeah. Yeah.
In regards to colleges that have profit, so to speak, an increase in enrollment, whatever, tend to be like Provost and SM. Those colleges also tend to have the most scholarships. And to my understanding, there's been a request for these colleges to bring in more revenue. How can they do that if the money that...
Well, just so we don't, it's coincidental that the two colleges you mentioned actually lose money. They don't make money.
Well, they lose money in the fact that their students bring in scholarships, so they're losing those students that make tuition.
Right.
But the demand is to increase how much they're bringing in, but how can they do that? So what are you going to do to scale the students in the classes higher so that the students lose scholarships?
No, I mean, not necessarily. No, we don't want to do anything that would adversely affect the desirability or the sustainability of students to come here and to succeed here. But, I mean, here's the problem. I mean, you can look at the numbers. The engineering, if I'm remembering correctly, college loses about $1.5 million a year. The science and math college loses somewhere around, if I'm remembering correctly, $3 million a year. The College of Visual and Performing Arts, if I remember, loses about $6 million a year. Okay? Now, we may not change any of what goes on in those colleges if we can find $36 million of savings somewhere else. Okay? But we're asking everyone at this point to do what they can do to help solve the $36 million. If that means engineering finding a way to only need $1 million of subsidy a year, then they need to try to be a part of that conversation. But in the end, we have to judge whether or not, we're not going to do anything that harms the institution. I mean, we can't do that. But we do have difficult decisions to make. And I don't know yet where it's going to play out. I have a feeling that it's going to take a year and a half to solve a $36 million problem. And I'm hopeful that our board, and I think they will be patient enough to allow us to take the year and a half to figure out how to solve the $36 million. And so this is a conversation. In some ways, I want the conversation to be over tomorrow, so I can say, we're done, it's now smooth sailing for a while. But I know we can't get there, because if I did that, we'd make more bad decisions, people wouldn't have a chance to be a part of the conversation, it would make matters worse. So my guess is it's going to take us about a year and a half to figure. But here's what you should take some solace in. These conversations are going on everywhere. California, Florida, Texas, Ohio, everywhere. These conversations are ongoing. Hi.
Earlier when you answered some questions about cutting programs, are you in any way thinking about cutting undergraduate programs? I'm in the LLSS, and I can tell you that that means I've been in two programs that, like two separate core requirements. The programs, and I've never had a class with 30 students, so that means they would all be gone. Are you just going to cut those programs entirely?
No, but we do want to have a conversation to say, are you intentionally keeping this program small for reasons of quality or convenience, or can we grow these programs to at least to have cohorts at the undergraduate level of 30 students? And we want to have that conversation, and those are the kind of conversations we're going to have. Do we have plans to cut any program? No, we don't have any plans to cut any undergraduate programs.
But what are you going to do next year when you don't have 30 students for a core requirement course?
There's a whole set of possibilities. On one extreme, it will be, here's the plan to grow this program to larger numbers so you have cohorts of this size. Or the worst case extreme would be, we're going to teach out the current students in this program and not accept future students into this program. Those are the two. Huh?
So you would cut the program?
It's a possibility, but we haven't finished the conversations to know if we're going to do that yet. All that I'm saying is there are many possibilities, and the two extremes are grow it or close it. But in no case would it affect the current students. We're always going to do what we need to do to get the current students through the program. None of this is good. If we can find a way to deal with $36 million any other way, we will do that before we change any programs. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, I reviewed most of the plan,
Yeah.
and the part that I really wanted to ask about is where exactly is the $36 million going to come from in the next year and a half? The slide that really caught me was that plane that's
coming down
in the next fiscal year, and it really scares me that this is all going to happen so quickly because we've already seen cuts of manpower on campus, and that's something that's not resting easily with me and a lot of people. And I'm really worried about that. What's an example of someone or something that will get cut to make the 36?
I believe, now this is going to provide a general answer to your question, and then it's understandable you want more specifics, but they don't exist yet. But generally, we're going to reduce administrative overhead. Where? I've got ideas, but I ain't got a lot of people to agree with me yet. So we got to get to the end of the process, and the president and the board ultimately have to take all my input, other people's, your input, and decide what administrative areas are we going to cut. But again, let me remind you though, a lot of these administrative areas are supporting programs that lose money, but people care a whole lot about, internally and externally. Okay? So these are not easy questions. So administrative overhead will be cut to some extent. In fact, we've already cut it $3 million in the last 6 months. Okay? Instructional productivity will increase. Part of these new teaching guidelines is to increase the amount of teaching that our faculty do. How much? Don't know yet. In what areas? Don't know yet. Step 3, streamlined degree programs. So that's a little different than increasing the amount of teaching that we do. We're actually, over probably the next year and a half, going to look at all 300 of our degree programs and ask the question, do we really need this many electives? Because every time you offer an elective, there's a chance for a small class size and a faculty member dedicating their time to a small number of students Do you really need as many electives as all of our degree plans offer? Or can they be streamlined? Because if you reduce the number of electives, you increase then the number of students available to go into a smaller set of core programs. Economically, that works. Step 4, we'll create some kind of incentive model that encourages colleges to increase their enrollments. So some of our solving of this problem over a year and a half, I hope, is increased enrollments over this year and a half. Step number 5 is, we haven't talked about it yet, but I can promise you one of the more kind of controversial aspects of this plan will be this one right here. One of the things that we're proposing to do is to take the lecturer faculty rank and elevate it. And since greater numbers of our classes are being taught by these folks, the idea is that we ought to give them more job security than a 1-year contract. Why? Because we need to attract people who are really great and motivated by teaching, and we need to reward the ones that are really good at it and retain them. And so we're going to try to take the lecturer faculty rank, which is right now, I think, viewed as kind of a second-class faculty rank, and we're going to try to elevate it to not be second-class, but to be different, but to be a good career path for people who choose teaching as their primary motivation over a more balanced portfolio of research and teaching. So this is one of the things that we'll have to negotiate through the collective bargaining process, but it's something that we're going to try to do.
On that same subject, do you know what would happen then to the part-time instructors then? Like, how do they factor into this?
Yeah,
Is
the
there
future
room
for
them in this plan?
the future for the part-time faculty member is the person that is the future that is most bleak, because chances are that the way that we deal with part of our $36 million problem is to have our senior faculty teach more courses, on average 1 more, which means we'll need fewer part-time faculty to teach those courses. So part of our cost savings comes from the elimination of some part-time faculty ranks, the elimination of what is called, that I didn't explain to you before, called a visiting professor, which is a full-time but temporary employee. And we've got a lot of faculty. In fact, most universities have what's called a bimodal distribution of faculty. They have faculty that are nearing retirement. They don't have anybody in the middle, and then they have a lot of young faculty. And it's just the way the economics worked out across the country. We've got a lot of faculty, like most public universities, that are getting ready to retire. Part of the cost savings that we'll have to decide is when they retire. If we have more senior faculty teaching, we may not need to replace as many of those retiring faculty than we would otherwise. And that's how you help kind of solve some of this $36 million problem. There are downsides to this, and we've got to be honest about that. But unless there's a better idea, it's one of the ways that we'll balance this equation. Yes, sir, in the back.
I do want to speak strongly to this point that you mentioned. Person with a bachelor's, master's, doctorate. Some of these people here, they've got bachelor's and master's of 10 years in industry, and now we're lucky enough to give them a teach here.
Right.
And as I said, this is like everything's been staying right on the line. And folks marvel at her. This happened in business back in 7, 8, 9, 5 years later. I said, 13. This is the story of time. I say, it's good. It's the reality of time. We can't tax, spend, and print money, and then all do more. We've got to balance the budget, right?
Right.
Good job.
Right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate those comments. Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if you guys all agree with me, but well, let me start. I'm a business assistant, so I came in here in 2008, and I was so excited. It was great, and we had so many students that we were housing students that were Ramada on Secord, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
I was an orientation leader for 2 years, and I loved PT. Here after 5 years of being, I still love PT, and I guess if you know, the beginning of this year, I was a little worried. When I didn't do anything 5 years ago, when did I get to 16? That's a really frightening thought, and I think that's what we're all thinking. That's why we're all here, and we're all so passionate that we're here for a reason. we would want them to grow and to be successful. We want to make sure that that all happens. Change is scary. Change is going to happen slowly, and it's kind of hit us and all. Wow, gosh, what do we do? And I'm glad that there's a plan, and it seems to be a pretty solid and strong plan. And I'm glad that all of us are here to session as well, to make sure that this is what we want, this is what's good for us. So, just kind of going off of that, I am very thankful that everybody has some questions about it. Just, I mean, if there was a plan that would not be lawful, and nobody said anything, where it would be. So, I was able to do that. Also, I mean, just going back from where I came from, I think this is really successful path, not only where we used to be, but even better. And really excited to get out of the university.
Listen, I appreciate you saying that. I'll probably remember this gentleman's comment and your comment as much as any tonight. And I'm honest about this. As hard as this seems at the moment, I really believe 5 years from now, it's going to be a cool place to be. I really do. Now, some of that is maybe just because I kind of am an optimistic guy. Another part of it is I've dealt with far greater challenges in my career before, and part of my career is about turnarounds. And so these things don't faze me. This is just what all organizations go through. I've seen it before. You're right. I think we have as good a plan as I've ever seen anywhere. That's no guarantee, but it's also something to really look forward to. Now, having said that, I told my wife over the holidays, as much as I enjoyed the first 3 months of being provost, the next 3 months are going to be living hell. Because as you go through this type of change, with all these people who are passionate and intelligent, not only in this room, but our faculty, okay, these conversations are not going to be easy. They probably shouldn't be. But it's what you got to do if you're going to work in a university that cares as much, and if you have all these people that are intelligent and have strong feelings. So this isn't fun, but it's what you do to get to good decisions. And I'm optimistic. If we can get through the next 3 months, I told my wife it actually gets better. You'll probably see me again, in about 3 months, and we'll have things to look forward to. But these next 3 months are going to be tough because I could spend all day long communicating with faculty, all day long, every day. And at the end of 3 months, people would still say, "But you didn't listen to me. You didn't, So it's just part of being. It's part of being in a large organization. The challenges of communication are immense, but I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next. Yes, ma'am.
So we didn't really get to my question about addressing the minimum requirements.
Okay, let me go back to that.
So you say you don't want to hurt the current students
Right.
at UT.
Right.
That includes undergraduates and graduate students. And we're talking about students in the Honors College who will eventually go off into doctoral and master's levels programs.
Right.
So you want them to have the best training that we can offer. Part of this best training is done outside of the classroom, which you have already said at the beginning of the presentation.
Right.
Now, in our program, and I'm sure it's similar.
Which program are you? I haven't figured that out yet.
I'm in psychology.
Psychology.
I'm a clinical
Okay. You're together.
Different.
Okay. All right.
I'm a clinical psychologist.
Got it.
PhD student. I'm actually a fellowship assistant. So I'm right at the top of your doctoral students.
Good.
And I'm here to say that most of my training and the prestige that I'm bringing once I leave the University of Toledo comes from outside of the classroom. It comes from the ability for me as a student to mentor undergraduate students in research.
Right.
It comes from having a mentor, a faculty advisor who's along the way with me in that process and has research that I can be a part of. And by having these minimum requirements, I understand what you're saying, but you're hurting the students here. Because if we have minimum requirements, we have to be in these courses, we lose the opportunity as students to teach courses because our faculty are now required to do it. Our faculty don't have the time to devote to making sure that our research is sound, that we are providing the best care to our clients in the clinic. So I'm a psychology clinic, that's part of my training. And that's something that you need small courses in order to do.
Okay. So I'm familiar with your program. It's a very good program. It's a great program. It's a very expensive program. The faculty in that program teach very little. In fact, they're the department I reviewed with the Board of Trustees just a couple of weeks ago as an example of high reputation, high cost. And as an example of the difficult choice that we have when you have $36 million fewer dollars to support that number of programs that are high quality but high cost. We're going to do everything possible to make sure we don't adversely affect your experience until you leave the program. But when you leave the program, and as you recruit different students, we're not going to make the promise that they're going to have yet. We might. But we're not yet going to make the promise that they're going to have the exact same experience you've had. So that's now, whether we are good to that, you'll hold us accountable so that we live up to what I've just said. But that's the perfect example, because I've got a presentation where I go through every single tenure and tenure track faculty member and what they teach. I could bring that up, and everyone would come to the conclusion that's a pretty light teaching load. Okay, so if we ask them to teach on average one more course, it helps us solve our economic problem. The question then becomes, what does it do overall to the program? And that's the conversation that we're going to have to work through, and I don't know that. So to be determined. Okay. How about all the way in the back?
I have a general kind of logistical question about how this $36 million gets split. I'm a graduate student in college pharmacy, which you go out here, travel to is a money-making college. Right now, we're the biggest money-making college. And I have a relationship with a lot of faculty, and they understand that. We understand that too. And that's fine. We're even good education, and we're going to get with that board. But this is my 4th year at the university, and this is my 3rd year at the health science campus. So how does the money from the college pharmacy and the income of that is fit into your budget? And 2, how does the $36 million deficit get split between main campus and health science campus? It's got part of the benefits as well. I know this is a main campus program, but it's a single university. It's not.
Yeah.
We're not a satellite hub.
We generally do not split the deficit, if you will, by college. We look at it holistically. So it doesn't mean if we've got a $36 million, $20 million is going to come from one campus and $16 million from the other. And we also don't typically worry about whether or not one campus is overall positive or overall negative. Frankly, I didn't even look at the numbers. I could do it very easily because the numbers are all there to see how that plays out. I will say this, the College of Medicine, if it weren't for the hospital, would be a big negative cash flow. But they run a hospital in order to make up for what they need for the educational mission. That's the way most academic medical centers do it. There's nothing unusual about that. That's the way that works. But if I heard your question correctly, and I may not, so correct me if I'm wrong, the positive cash flow that the College of Pharmacy creates goes to fund all of those programs that need subsidy, everything from foreign languages to visual and performing arts to engineering to all the other things that we do. Ultimately, we look at ourselves as a university, a one university. We don't think of it as a tub on its own bottom the way Harvard does, for example. And so as long as the whole works, we're okay with that. But in the end, the whole isn't working right now to the tune of $36 million, so the whole's got to be adjusted somehow, some way. And we're still in the middle, early stages of kind of working it out. And again, I'm predicting that this isn't a 3-month, this is probably a 1.5 year kind of problem to solve.
Okay, so
but the good news is, I will tell you, I started with this, I'm going to come back to it. If you keep electing good people to work with that are spending the kind of time that they're spending with us, working through these problems, we're going to be okay as a university community. We're going to be okay. We'll find the solution ultimately that adjusts it appropriately. I don't think you've asked a question.
No, I haven't. One of the things that this PowerPoint goes over is bettering the student experience, making this better for students. Yet, if you look at college rankings, one of the factors that plays into college rankings is the student to faculty ratio. And colleges with a smaller student to faculty ratio are generally ranked better because those students get more individualized attention in their classes. How are you going to ensure that if you make classes bigger, those students will still get the same, if not better, individualized attention in their classes, especially in programs such as nursing and engineering?
So there are a number of ways to answer your question. I don't know that I'll cover all of them. One would be to say our numbers are already pretty low, so the fact that they would go up somewhat probably doesn't hurt us too much relative to the other institutions. Second, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not chasing rankings is really in the best interest of anyone. And that's a debate like intercollegiate athletics and economic development that we constantly have with ourselves to say, are we chasing rankings for our own ego? Are we chasing rankings because it's truly, we think, beneficiary to our students' perspective, current and future? And third way to answer the question would be most accrediting and ranking institutions are shifting from input measures to output measures. So this metric that you're using, an example of an input measure, how small is the class size, where a lot of the ranking are shifting to, how many of your graduates passed the bar exam, how many of your graduates passed the nursing boards, how many of your graduates passed the CPA exam, and they're ranking more on the outputs and less on the inputs. Because again, who's to say that a smaller class size is better if the university produces more graduates that pass national licensure exam? In fact, you could argue that university must be a hell of a lot better value, especially if their tuition is less. Why should they be ranked less because they have a lower student-faculty ratio? Maybe they should be ranked higher for having, the other way around, a higher student-faculty ratio. You want to follow up on that?
No, what I'm asking is, how are you going to ensure that the students won't become, quote unquote, lost with less faculty? Like, if you go to Ohio State with 60,000 kids, you're not going to get individualized attention.
Right.
And that's something that's very important to students. At least it's important to me that my professor knows my name and knows my needs in a classroom. And I feel if there's 24 students, I can get better attention. Whereas if I'm competing with more students, 6 more.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I went to an Ohio State type of institution because it was, I don't know that I actually went here for that reason. I'm quite sure I didn't. You don't want to know the reason I picked my university. That's a whole different story. But I happened to end up in a top 3 ranked accounting program. It's ranked nationally in the top 3. I didn't know that when I went, but it is. But I will tell you, my undergraduate experience at the University of Texas at Austin State, it was terrible. Because most of my classes were taught by TAs. I'm not ashamed to admit I couldn't understand half of them. I couldn't understand what they were saying. I'm not being judgmental anyway. I just couldn't understand. I realized people struggle with my accent. I was really struggling with what I was getting from the people who were teaching my undergraduate class. I routinely had classes of 90. I had classes up to 600 at the university. So I know exactly what goes on at Ohio State. And I don't want that to happen here. In fact, what we're trying to do ultimately is take more of our senior faculty who are not currently teaching undergraduate courses and put them into undergraduate courses. This extra course that I'm asking them to teach, I'm hoping and trying to steer them in the direction of not teaching another graduate course, but teaching an undergraduate course. So the undergraduate experience actually, by virtue of making these changes, ends up being better, not worse, because of these changes that we're having today. That's my hope and expectation, that it actually gets better. And if we can use these resources to actually teach faculty maybe some techniques that are more applicable to your generation and a little less applicable to my generation, I think you benefit also. You're a generation that does things differently. You think differently than my generation. I'm constantly amazed. One of the best educations for me is to sit on one side of a one-way mirror and listen to students like you talk about issues. Is that the way you guys think? That's interesting. That's really noble in a lot of ways. You're much more community-oriented, for example, than my generation. My generation was kind of, I got to get to the top and, get out of the way. Your generation is very much, no, I want everybody to have a chance at a great instructor, a good classroom, great technology. I mean, it's very interesting. I'm making generalizations, but it's a generalization that fits to your generation. Where should I go next? Yeah. Hallelujah, I'm all for that. That's good. All right. Let's see. Who hasn't asked one? Oh, you haven't asked one there. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, it's kind of a point of clarification.
Yeah.
Now everyone here knows that within we as a university, we've been similar to this in health sciences in the last handful of years, and from speaking to a few students that are on campus, I know this is not for everybody, but ultimately in the end, if the health science campus come up, the college as well. I don't know if you remember.
What was that last part? I didn't hear that last part.
The health science campus came out better light.
Okay, whether the health science campus is coming out in a better place?
No, you did something similar on the health science campus.
Oh, well, that's very nice. That was a softball question. I appreciated that. Let me hit that one there for a little bit.
Because my question I think is a lot of students think that this is kind of like a far-fetched idea that we haven't done this before. We've done this once already at the university. You explain it a little bit?
Well, again, this is setting me up a little, and I appreciate it. And I don't know if you did it on purpose, but I don't know if any of you have been on the health science campus, say in the last couple of years. But if you haven't, you should go, because the transformation that campus made in the last 2.5 years is remarkable. It's a different place. I will honestly tell you, when they asked me to begin to lead the hospital and the clinics, it's not a place I would have chosen to go for my own health care. I'll just be honest with you. But it is that place now. And in fact, this is a crazy story. It's coincidental, and I'm sure you didn't know this, but my father-in-law, who lives with me, had a stroke a week and a half ago. And so we're in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, his left side of his body's paralyzed. Okay. The ambulance rushes in, we call 911, ambulance rushes in, and I told him, I said, take him to UTMC. Oh, we can't do that, sir. We're required by law to take him to St. something. I said, I'm telling you right now, you're taking him to UTMC. If I have to put him in my own car, you're taking him to UTMC. And they called for permission off to UTMC. So he goes. UTMC assembled a stroke team by the time that we got there that was as good as any health care that occurs anywhere in the country. And the reason I wanted to go there, because I knew that 6 months ago we hired two of the absolute best specialists in the country from the University of Pittsburgh, who are able to do the most current procedure for those who experience a stroke. And the way it works is, by the time that a person experiences a stroke, and you may have a loved one that does this one day, you have a certain amount of time to get them to the ED. When they get to the ED, there's a certain amount of time that they have to decide whether to administer a certain drug, which is called TPA. I don't even know what it stands for, but they refer to it as TPA. It's got downside risks, though, so it's not an automatic decision. They made the decision, in my father-in-law's case, to administer the drug. It immediately began to work, and all of a sudden he could move his left leg again, he could move his arm again, still had kind of paralysis in the face and hand. Then they have a certain period of time to decide whether to use this state-of-the-art procedure, which if they decide the drug isn't working well enough, they then can wheel him into a new piece of technology. I won't tell you how much that costs, but a new piece of technology that they go up through the groin with a catheter. They reach up into the brain and they suck out the blood clot that's causing the stroke. And if they do that, that's state of the art. Now, fortunately, the drug worked for him, but now he's back home now after going into the ICU, step down, rehab, full. And tomorrow, incidentally, they called today, he's the patient that's being taken into the second-year medical student class to talk about what happened to the stroke. So he's now a part of the teaching of future physicians. So that's kind of a cool story to end on. I'm going to have to end with that one, I think. So why don't we end there, if that's okay?
Sure.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
everyone thought that that was as informative as I thought it was. Also, election packets are available. We do not have them right now.